cold as it is where you, but it's cold. Uh, here
And
we are.
we are live as we're talking about the weather.
The weather.
I'm Joe J. Sexton. I'm with my friend Danielle Moody. This is called The Check-In, a show where a couple of friends hang out on their lunch breaks and talk about life under increasing fascism. Danielle, I'm cold. You're cold. We're cozy. We're comfy. Luckily, there's nothing to talk about. Things are
Ugh.
great. They've chilled out. Everything's cool. How are you?
So right before folks, we came on, my mind has been uh outside of Trumpville for the last couple of days because I have been like praying and manifesting and sending high vibrations to my family's island of Jamaica, that was rocked by a Category 5 hurricane, the first time in the nation's 174-year history that it was directly hit by a Category 5. And so, it's weird. It's a funny thing because I didn't grow up going to Jamaica, Jared, in the way that like my cousins did. Like they went every summer. And I didn't. I've gone to Jamaica probably like two handfuls of times, right? Um, and I think that there's something that is different there. My mom has, uh, had four brothers, and two sisters, right? And what's really interesting is that the women always have a different relationship to the country that I find than the men do. And but nonetheless, it was like it's really still gut wrenching because to me that's like my ancestral home, right? That is where like my grandparents, great grandparents, great great grandparents, that is where like our DNA is in the soil of the country. And even if it isn't a place that I have visited and have like my own full relationship with, there is something that is very like spiritual and ancestral about that place, your family's homeland, at least for me. And so it's just been a lot of grief and a lot of worry, and a lot of hope about their ability to restore, but then also a lot of rage at colonial extraction and the absolute blind greed that has led to climate change that is going to affect more Black and Brown people, more Black and Brown countries who had little to nothing to do with the global situation that was created by mass greed, and deregulation. And that is what makes it also just really gut wrenching, right? It's like, when do we ever escape the ravages of colonization and racism and excessiveness? Like, when do we ever, when do we ever get to the other side of this? And it is just, it's in every touch point. It's in every place. Um, and so that's where my mind has been.
I first of all, I hope that your people are well. It was a really strange thing. A couple points about the storm. It was really strange watching this thing start to materialize. And I'm a weather guy. I'll just go ahead and put my
Oh, that's right.
yeah.
That became like your thing in COVID, right?
No, it wasn't during COVID. It was right before COVID. I just
Okay.
realized I didn't know enough about weather, and I was like, I want to learn about weather. Autism is a hell of a thing. And so, like, I was watching this thing, it's an odd feeling as, like, climate change, like, creates these superstorms to watch them happen. And, like, I was watching sort of the coverage of it. And the thing that kept happening, Danielle, and I don't know if you saw it, maybe you paid attention to it because Jamaica was sort of being centered in it. It was a very odd thing because people were like, don't worry, this isn't going to hit America,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right. Like, oh, don't worry, this
Yep.
is not going to actually veer into America, so everything's fine, which goes back to, sort of the American centric empire sort of mindset that, I believe you're sort of touching on a little bit, which I always find that grotesque. Like,
Yep.
because it's the sort of hidden white supremacy, American supremacy thing that people don't even think about. You
Mm.
know, it's like the same idea as like, oh, people are starving in other countries. You better appreciate what you have. You know,
Yep.
it's like that sort of thing that gets into to people's heads. And the second thing I'm thinking about is I believe it was last week that we were actually talking about how much of what we're dealing with is like a storm approaching and
Yep.
how much of it is being like I'm thinking about it was back in 2016. It was actually on my birthday. It was on October 7th, where a hurricane hit Georgia where I was living at the time. And that was the night with the Trump Access Hollywood video, the night it came out. And the power went out for a few days. And I was like, well, he must be done. And and then I'm trying to get my power back on. I'm trying to take care of stuff around my house and neighborhood. But one of the things, and I just want to make a mention because one of the things we're sort of patterning for people, like I see that you are worried about your family and you're worried about your lineage and where you come from. But at the same time, like this awful thing has happened. We still don't know what has occurred there. We still don't understand the toll of it. But you are calm, right?
Yeah.
You like, and the reason that you're calm is because you are in the middle of a chaotic situation. You're in the middle of an emergency. And when a storm hits, you have other things to worry about besides Donald Trump's dumb bullshit.
Yeah.
The things he
Yeah.
says, the videos he shares, whatever crazy thing that he said, what actually comes to you in the middle and hopefully most people if we're trying to regulate and ground, what actually comes to the forefront is what matters. Right? And
Mhm.
not only is it not what the fuck this guy is saying, not only the noise, it's, oh, family, lineage,
Yep.
tradition, caring about what happens to other human beings. And I think whether people have family that are in Jamaica, like one of the things that's causing me rage is, of course, SNAP benefits are being cut off
Yep.
on November 1st. It's a literal storm.
Mhm.
It's a category 5 hurricane that's getting ready to hit people within America. Over 42 million people are getting ready to be put into an absolute crisis. And what we can do in those situations, whether or not it's our family being put in the center of a disaster that should not happen, we shouldn't have this happen, right? And you can go ahead and create wild conspiracy theories. Oh, it's weather controlled weather machines. It's the deep state that is like hitting here and trying to do this. And that allows that focus to be distributed elsewhere, right? Or you can double down and be like, I see what matters. I know what matters. I'm going to do something about this and I'm going to stay grounded in the middle of crisis. And I think you're patterning something incredibly important for people right now.
I think there's so much in what you said, and I think that that is what is incredibly important. And I feel like you and I have had this conversation over the course of many weeks now, which is our humanity, right? And when you put your energy and attention into what is dehumanizing you, as opposed to what is humanizing us, you give that, right, more power. And so it's by virtual accident, really, that this storm is happening, in the Caribbean, hitting my family's, country. And at that time, I decided to pause from the ballroom and from the military and from the murders that they're committing and war crimes in Venezuela and Gaza and this, that, and the other thing. And what I will say is that Donald Trump is an attention storm. This regime is an attention storm. And it only gets more and more powerful with the more eyeballs and the more tweets and the more shares and all of what we are feeding it. And it is not to say that we don't pay attention to the destruction that is happening, but it's like, how are we paying attention to me is what actually matters. So you bring up the SNAP benefits. And what I am sharing all around, my platforms and talking about on my shows are the fact that, like, here's how you help your local pantry. Here's how you find out, like, what you can do. People ask on a daily basis, what should I do? What should I do? I feel powerless. Well, people are going hungry. Right. And we're not just talking about the lines that we've seen of at food pantries that are particularly giving certain time blocks to federal workers that have been furloughed and have not received checks and can't afford them. But what we know is that what is coming, what is impending, to your point, on November 1st is a doomsday, right? For families that, like, there is nothing in the coffers, right? They're not waiting on a check. This is something that allows them to be able to sustain. That is the point of supplemental nutritional assistance programs, right? That is the point, is that we help the most vulnerable among us. And the thing is, I watched this video, Jared, and I'll just to give a quick aside, you know, because I have a lot of feelings and, like, emotions, this week. And I watched this video, and it was this man, and I feel like he's in Chicago, and he is a Black man, and he's a barber, and he goes around into different parts of Chicago, I believe. Uh, and he provides free haircuts, brings clothing, sneakers, dignity back to the unhoused, people who have been thrown away, right? And we live in a society that is perpetuated on lies that tell us that human beings are disposable, that tell us that when we look at those that have been hit by tragedy, because that is exactly what has happened to those that are without homes, they've been hit by tragedy. There is none of us, right, that we are closer in connection with those that we pass on the street,
Yep.
right, than with those that we anoint in the C-suite. We have more connection with those that are living hand to mouth than with those who we spotlight that are dripped in, diamonds and gold, and society tells us that those are the aspirations that we should hold, right? Um, and it just, and I was in tears because I'm saying all human beings want is to be seen and to be loved. And it's like, and we've created a society that denies those two very things. And that tells us that those people, right, their lot in life is of their own failing, as opposed to the failure of this country, a failure of systems, right? So I feel like instead of giving attention to the monster, right, that we actually have to tend to those who are in desperate need of being seen, of being heard, and needing to be cared for and loved. And that is what will strengthen us. That is what I believe that ultimately resistance looks like in the face of such sociopathic depravity. And
And
that's where my mind has been.
I couldn't agree more. And there are a couple of things that are happening here because a lot of what we're talking about is being able to hold multiple things at once, but being able to prioritize them instead of getting dysregulated by them and not doing anything. Right. So, for instance, I'll just go ahead and lay my cards on the table. The anger and the wrath that I have for these motherfuckers, I cannot talk about it on this platform. I can't. And that's a hard part of, like, what happens when the social contract gets destroyed is you can't actually talk about what's going on here. But what I can talk about is this. People ask me all the time, what is it I can do? Because they're talking about national and international politics, right?
Mhm.
Like, what am I supposed to do about the fact that the ceasefire in Gaza just got absolutely eradicated? You could protest, you can write people, whatever, but that right now is out of your hands. You can help
Yep.
Palestinians who are starving, who, by the way, Americans are starving and more Americans are going to starve. Notice the connection. Notice how the powers that be are doing this to everybody, everywhere, and those chickens are coming home to roost.
Yep.
But in this case, Democrats don't need your money. They don't need your
No, they
donation.
don't.
The big giant groups that, like, everybody knows, they don't need your money right now. Your neighbor needs your money. They need your support. Donate to your local food banks. Donate to your local women's shelters. Donate to your local animal shelters. Because what's getting ready to happen right
Yeah.
now is a complete reshuffling of things, and you can actually help in this regard. And to go ahead and take the natural disaster, because this is an unnatural disaster. This is a chosen disaster that's getting ready to happen. If a natural disaster comes in, knocks down your tree, knocks down your neighbor should come over and help you, and you should go over and help your neighbor. Period.
Yeah.
Why? Because you need to take care of each other. So it starts local and it starts personally. And that is the whole thing that we're talking about here, which is, do you want to feel agency under ascendant fascism? Help your neighbors.
Hmm.
That's it. And once you start doing that, the clarity that we're talking about, it becomes very obvious, because if you're helping someone and seeing their humanity, and by the way, like when it comes to SNAP or when it comes to any of this, let's call this what it is. It's not that people have failed at capitalism. Capitalism has failed them.
Hmm.
What has happened with social programs in this country is that so the wealthy could make more money, we have created systems so they don't have to pay people as much.
Yep.
If you go get a job at Walmart, you go get a job at McDonald's, you go get a job wherever, they teach you how to get on assistance because they don't want to pay for it. You and I and everyone else pays for it. It's like a monster that is constantly at our tails, and it's getting more people.
Yep.
That's the point as this expands. And as you help people and you realize you're not taking pity on them, you're helping them in the same way that you will probably need help.
Yep.
They are human beings and they have been failed and predated on by a system that you yourself, and that's the thing, we're talking about radical empathy here. We
Hmm.
have to get past sociopathic horseshit in this country where we don't want to pay our taxes to help people like I deserve the money I make. No, we're stronger together. And if we don't help others, we're all going to fall. Once you start realizing that the people who need this assistance deserve it because they are human beings and they've been fucked over by a fucked up system, that anger that we're talking about, there's room for that anger because they're not just hurting you, they're not just hurting your family, they're hurting the human family. And they have been for a very long time. And then we can start deciding what to do with that anger. Once we're able to get together and decide what is real and what is important, all of a sudden, then we can start to figure out how to fight these motherfuckers. But we can't listen to them all the time because they distract from the actual human feelings of empathy and connection and what is right and what is wrong.
And I think about this and everything that you just said in the context of the mayoral race that is happening right now in New York City, and the way that both Republicans and establishment Democrats want to bring Zoran Mamdani down.
Yep.
And there are a number of reasons for that. One, he's young. Two, he's brown. Three, he's Muslim. Four, he's honest,
Yep.
right? And five, he wants to change the system that only benefits a few. And more people are able to see both the connection with class warfare and race warfare, right? And he is like the actual, right, embodiment of those two things. Now, for folks who are just like, well, Bernie's been talking about this forever, Bernie lacks a racial lens, right? Which has always been my critique of Bernie Sanders. Not that I don't agree with the things that he offers up, but a critique without a racial lens is, like it means it's a fishbowl without any water. It's useless, right? And so I think that the reason why there is such a fear and an anger and an angst at Mandani is that if you begin to peel back these layers, you realize who's at the center of it. You realize who is the one that is gaining from this. I said this yesterday, Jared. This category 5 hurricane that hit is being powered, right, by the oligarchs,
Mhm.
right? Right now, we're in a war in this country against time and AI, right? Because AI, which is also destroying the planet, is now destroying people's livelihoods. Thousands of people have just been laid off at Amazon. One of like the number two workforce manager in the country. Amazon is laying off 14,000 yesterday, on to 30,000, and then in the next 2 to 5 years, 600,000 people. Right, and they're making no qualms about it. It's because AI is coming for white collar jobs, not the factory jobs. The robots are coming for those, but AI is now going to replace the white collar jobs. So you think to yourself, and I go back to what I said, all of this is being powered by the oligarchs, the actual storms that are growing in ferocity and the ones that they are creating of their own making. And we have to see our power in this is not to think that, oh, well, I'm going to try and use my lottery mentality to continue to scratch off because I'm just one scratch off away from Bill Gates, or I'm one scratch off away from Zuckerberg. No, you're not, right? You're one lost check away from being unhoused. You're one emergency away, right, from the person that you're pitying on the street. And so I feel like all of this devastation, to me, if we can see it, if we can choose to understand it and unpack it, it is going to be purposeful in the long run, because it is opening our eyes to the real monsters, the real horrors, the storms that are real and those that have been man-made, billionaire made. And we can decide how we face it, right? Because now it's at our doorstep. Now it is everywhere, right? And we have to decide how we face it.
So there are two big things, because you nailed it dead to rights here. There are two big things that I want to expand on here that I don't feel like is talked about anywhere, which is unfortunate. First things first. People don't know this because it's not reported enough. All of the major factors are there for a major economic collapse right now. So first of all, you have your AI bubble, a machine that doesn't actually work or do what it's supposed to do. And the only way that it could make a profit in any way and avoid a giant popping of the bubble is to lay off the white collar class of worker. And guess what happens if those people get laid off? You have an economic collapse, period, and political instability. And by the way, the only thing that's growing in this country is AI data centers and ICE. All you have to do is do the math there. Because what's going to happen is they've taken our tax dollars and they have created a fascistic secret police that will be the last refuge for people who have been laid off. That's it. They will be able to move them in there and basically create an army and police under their control. Which, what does it do? It oppresses everybody using the lens of white patriarchal supremacy. The next part of this, Danielle, you know what happens when people aren't able to afford to live in a country? They rack up debt. Guess what? We've reached the point of saturated debt. The people right now who are getting ready to lose their SNAP benefits, they're in debt. And they're in debt because that wasn't enough. And on top of that, the economy doesn't work. Everybody else, credit, maxed out at this point. Okay. Also, by the way, consumer spending in this country, the only group that actually holds up consumer spending at this point is the top 10%.
10%.
That's it. So what happens if you take away the food benefits from people? They're not going to buy other things. What happens when you start laying off white collar workers? They're not going to buy things. There is going to be no circulation of money. So what happens in all of this, Danielle? Let me go ahead and call it what it is. It is the intentional demolishing of the economy of the United States of America. Vulture capitalism. It's the exact same way that these financial firms will buy a business, run up as much debt as humanly possible because they're not responsible for it, basically steal the copper wiring out of the walls, and then they sell it and they make a profit or they chop it down to spare parts. The wealthy at this point have created a situation they're not able to fix it, so they're going to run it into the ground. They'll make money because they'll get bailed out and they'll be fine. You and I and everyone else, we have hard shit coming. Period. There's a storm coming. And when there's a storm coming, you get prepared for it. So what we're talking about with SNAP, those are the most vulnerable people right now. They're not going to be the last who are going to have to deal with this. And going back to past conversations you and I have had, you have to reconsider, do I need all this shit?
Yep.
Do I need to buy all this shit? Like, is it important that I have quick access to these things? No, it's not. We need to prioritize and figure out what we have to get before the storm and how we're going to make it through the storm. The second part, and it brings me to
Mhm,
what you just,
mhm.
this doesn't get talked about. What happened in this country back in 2016 with Bernie Sanders and the Democratic Party, we're still dealing with it. Bernie wanted to talk about class politics without a racial component of it. The Democratic Party, they saw him as a threat, so they stopped talking about class politics and they only talked about the identity politics
Yep.
aspect of it. And they created a counterbalance. So, what have we missed in this, Danielle? Intersectionality.
Yep.
Class and race and sex and gay and trans people, all of these things, they are interconnected. Because the great secret of white supremacy is this. Does it make white people feel better about themselves? Maybe, if they're lost. But the second part, it keeps different people from coming together to
Yep.
recognize that this is actually a class war. So instead, they push us in, and I'm not just talking about the Democratic Party, the Republican
Mhm,
Party has done
mhm.
for charge. They have now put it into a situation where we are going to have to approach this, where we are going to have to rebuild the consciousness that all these different components work together. This is exactly how it has always worked, and now it is supercharged because capitalism requires us to keep from recognizing that we are in this together. You have to be able to do all these things at once. That's the challenge at this point. We have to take that schism that occurred and be like, no, that actually isn't a schism. It's all together at once. Instead of protecting where you get your money from and whether or not big donors are comfortable. We as people, we can't rely on the politicians to do it. They have no incentive to do it. We have to do it ourselves.
And I think that that is probably, because I was thinking about this today when before we came on. That is the work. The
That's the work.
work is to, one, is to recognize the interconnectedness of all of these siloed problems that have been divvied out one by one by one. And what they've done is created, right, this like these catastrophic layers that have now we're seeing the full picture of, right? We're able to say, well, I'm not them, right? Like, I'm not the brown people that they're coming for. I'm not the undocumented. I'm not the one that's, living on the bubble of survival, that if I lose my SNAP benefits or if I lose this, I'm not a federal worker. I'm not, it was always the I'm not to distance ourselves from each other. And now we are seeing, literally, we are all in the same boat,
Right.
right? We are all in the same boat. And we have to realize, like, do we have the oars to move ourselves, or are we waiting to be moved?
Yes.
Right? And for too long, we have put our faith into other people to guide us, folks, and they have taken us to the fucking edge. And I say this, I said this last night at a dinner with a friend about Mamdani. We also have to realize that there is not one savior, right? Like, do not put all of your hopes and dreams behind one person and then think that you can, like, go back to sleep. Right? That if you want structural change, it doesn't come one person at a time. It comes when we decide to lift all boats, when we decide to row in the same direction. And so if you want government to change, then, like, you have to be the one that is vigilant about how government changes. It is not just about anointing the next person to get gobbled up by the system and the donors and the this and the that so that you can go back to sleep.
I will say, and by the way, you couldn't be more right. I just want to add something to that. People are looking for the next Barack Obama.
Yes.
And guess what happened with Barack Obama? And this is an uncomfortable truth. White liberals in this country, they wanted a black savior. They wanted someone to do it for them. And so they projected onto him their own idea of what America is or was or how it should work. And it goes back to I think we talked about it last week, Danielle. It was the idea of, I don't want to have to think about the president.
Right.
I don't want to have to think about these things. He'll take care of it. And what happened in those 8 years? It was 1 year before the Tea Party and the fascist movement of the GOP started moving in a different direction. And we can talk about Obama's presidency and we can get into it. What happened by the end of that is people said, well, I guess things can't change. I guess like this savior figure can't make everything better because you can't look around for saviors.
Nope.
You have to do the fucking work yourself. And that's hard to say. And I'm sorry if that sounds tough, but like you can't just hope. Like I want Mamdani to win. I think it's a great thing if he wins this race. But that doesn't mean that everything's fine.
That's the thing, is that we have this in this country. We have a very um like fantasy Disneyland mindset where we're just like, where we think that everything gets tied up neatly, in a 30-minute sitcom, where we believe that like Santa Claus is coming to gift us with all of these things, that we don't have to grow into the responsibility of adulthood, and adulthood being consciousness. It is like this perpetual infantilization of Americans, and largely white Americans, around like what responsibility you don't need to have, right? And so what I'm saying here is that like we have given up so much in order that we think that we are gaining like this freedom, when in fact that we have not. Because freedom is really about self-determination, and when you're leaving your life up to someone else to determine, then you might as well be enslaved, right? Like that's what they have done, right? So it's like, I feel as if folks are being woken up slowly, Jared, but I'm in the space of like wanting to shake the shit out of people. Right? Like the goal is not to go back to sleep. The goal is not to not care about the presidency anymore. The goal should be that I will never take my eye off the ball ever fucking again. Because if we make it through this, I never want this to happen again to another generation at another point in time when everybody thinks like, oh, job done. Like the job is not done. Right? And so, like, I feel like that's the mindset that we have to have. And I don't know if enough Americans are ready for that kind of real talk and are ready for that kind of real work, right? Because you always want to put the responsibility on other people to do the thing, right? And I'm saying no. Like that's how the fuck we got here, because Donald Trump knows that a good percentage of Americans are lazy, and a good percentage of Americans pray not to a God, but to to Santa Claus to deliver them gifts. Right? So like you have got to wake yourself up out of that and stay awake. Otherwise, we fall prey to the same cycles, to the same patterns over and over again. And it with each time, it actually gets way worse than the last time.
It absolutely does. And I want to bring it to what's getting ready to happen. Because here are the ways that we can approach it. And by the way, I just want to say I appreciate something, which is I was thinking about before we did this. You and I have spent the past few months having these conversations, and we've been having emotional and psychological conversations. But now we're fucking in it. You know what I mean? So now part of what we're doing, and this is the former academic in me, we've been scaffolding the ideas that have to eventually be put into action. So with this case, so like for instance, whether it's a natural disaster or whether it's the SNAP benefits being turned off or whether or not it's, I mean, my God, by the way, ICE is just killing people at this point.
Yeah.
There was a period months ago where I was like, oh, they'll kill somebody and then all of a sudden we'll have a conversation about it. No, they're just doing it, period. So we're now in it, right? The shit has hit the fan. So, like, let's take something like the SNAP benefits. So, is this a giant human tragedy? Absolutely, it is. Are we going to see ramifications of it? Absolutely, we are. This is another opportunity for clarity. This
Yeah.
is another opportunity to say, look what they're doing to these people. They're going to do it to all of us. On top of that, we now need to close ranks and we need to do something about this. And we can't live in fantasy land anymore. We can't, like I love the idea of praying to Santa Claus because that is the idea. what is, and by the way, this is the white moderates idea. You see maybe the New York Times will run something about this on like page 5 or 6, and what it is, it's like sitting there reading it or looking on your tablet and say, oh, that's a shame, I'm sure somebody will do something about it.
Right. Swipe.
Oh, I'm sure the Democrats and the Republicans will come up with a deal, or they'll figure out a way to do this. Or, by the way, I mean, it was just the other day, which I think is incredibly telling about this conversation. A billionaire paid the army, right? Like, oh
Yeah,
yeah,
which apparently amounts to $100 a person. Like, apparently, like, apparently the money, the $130 million to the military also, I don't know, coincidentally, that man has ties to Epstein.
weird, isn't it? Also,
Weird.
also, by the way, just a notice of the 42 million Americans on SNAP, a lot of them are in the fucking military.
Yep.
Why? Because those people are being used. So, what happens here? We either take care of this situation and close ranks and see the reality of the situation, or we hope someone takes care of it for us. And by the way, it's not the parties that are going to take care of it because our government has been completely corrupted by the wealth class. You know who's going to take care of it for us? It's the favorite of the white moderate, Danielle, the police. The police are going to make sure that you can go about your life unimpeded because they're going to take care of the criminals,
Yeah.
right? Why? Because the social contract has started to break. Well, actually, it's been shredded. I shouldn't even say started to break. It has broken. Whenever the social contract breaks, there's a reason to not pay attention to the law anymore. If
Yep.
your family is going to starve, the fucking law doesn't matter, period, especially if it's state sponsored. Well, I don't want to defund the police because they're going to answer the call. By the way, they don't answer your fucking call because you are not in the gated community and you are not one of the people who is paying the money for them. So, what is it? It's the illusion that somebody will do something to help you.
Yep.
Somebody will do something to insulate you from that. So, what are we talking about here? We are talking about interlocking and increasingly escalating periods of magical thinking. Someone will help these people. Someone will protect me from these people. And guess what, Danielle? That is the essence of fascism. If I just go along with it, these motherfuckers, I don't like them, but they'll make sure that it gets taken care of. And what are you doing there? You're literally making a deal with the
With the
devil,
devil. Come on.
opposed to helping other people and discovering what matters and discovering the actual antidote to what's happening.
And honestly, I have to say that we cannot make this again about our individual survival, right?
Yeah.
It has to be about the collective. Because when you are only thinking about yourself and your own family, you make decisions that are contrary to what is actually needed for collective care, right? And you play into the hands of those that are doing the separating and the sorting based on race and gender and religion and orientation and this, that, and the other thing. And so when we start to see that we all have a common enemy, right, that is playing us, then we start to realize that we are stronger together. And that means all of us, not just all of us that look alike or pray alike or love alike, or et cetera, but all of us, right? And I think, that, like, I just want to go back to the lottery mindset again for a minute, because like that's the thing, is that we have such a strong desire in this country to separate from whom we deem to be less than, rather than to create a society where everyone has what they need and no one is less than. Right? And so that desire to, like, well, look at my cars and look at my big house and look how I'm in debt up to my ears and look at these things that I have, right? Like, to go back to the question that you asked, do you need it? Did you need it all? Because now we're coming down to a place of like survival. And I don't think that you needed the 3 fucking car garage. And I don't think that you needed the McMansion. And I don't think that you needed to compete with your neighbor down the street instead of making sure that like everyone on the block knew each other and cared for each other and looked out for one another. Right? Like there is just I really like at the root of it all, I swear I become more radicalized every single day because I'm just like capitalism is the root of all evil. It really truly is the root of all evil. Everything comes back to this extractive, manipulative, grotesque system that is about just turning us all into monopoly pieces on a board, and the oligarchs get to move the pieces around.
The wildest thing about it, and I had a working understanding of and an economic understanding of capitalism and a little bit of a historical. Like the system literally was built because it believed that human beings were disgusting and self-serving. So all of the financial incentives, and it makes sense that over time it just picks up speed and picks up speed and eventually like leads to self-destruction. The entire idea is that human beings will not help each other unless there's an incentive for a trading of goods or resources. That's it. But meanwhile, what do? We tell ourselves a fairy tale, right? So, like, let's say, for instance, a storm hits a town, or there's a school shooting. Oh, this community, it takes care of itself. They're there for each other and whatever. Or, by the way, the other great fairy tale of this is, the nonprofit charitable giving of the wealthy. I don't know if people know this. The reason why the wealthy started giving money to charities was because during the Gilded Age, we were close to a class revolution. And they were like, well, I guess if we're able to, and by the way, there's a reason why there are tax incentives for them to do it. Because they got together and they're like, we need to create this PR thing, right?
Mhm.
Charity shouldn't exist. Charity
Mhm.
does not exist. And every time I'm in a meeting with a nonprofit, I say, I appreciate what you're doing. You shouldn't have to exist. This is shit that should be taken care of. The person shouldn't have to give money for this thing to happen. And by the way, while we're on this subject, you shouldn't have to give to a food pantry. You
Yep.
shouldn't have to give to a women's shelter. You shouldn't have to give to these things. The fact that you're having to do this is wrong. And people need to be able to see it and say, I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do and because it helps other people, but also fuck the people who made me do this
Yep.
because it shouldn't work this way. And we shouldn't have a system that thinks that we're all bad and we're all wrong, which, by the way, has an element in religion with the original sin.
Yep.
It's the idea that we're all wretched and wicked, and it's a system that makes us act wretched and wicked. The entire point of this, we should be able to say, I'm helping people. This isn't what should fucking happen. And saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to help people and I'm going to connect with people. But in the future, I'm going to ensure that this shit doesn't happen again. And that is holding two things at once that seem contradictory, but they actually are completely in conversation with each other.
I mean, we just, again, I will say that in the midst of collapse, there is an opportunity to imagine what we actually want instead of settling for what they give us. And that is what we've been doing, just settling for the crumbs, right? Saying to ourselves that what we are given is good enough. And it's not, because to all of the great points that you made, these organizations that support and give help and aid, they shouldn't have to exist because guess what? The government has more than enough of our money that we have paid in to help as many people as they want. All of a sudden, they had $170 billion for ICE, but you got no money for education. You got no money to feed the poor. You got no money to build homes for the unhoused, but you found magically $170 billion to create a police state with our fucking money and then tell us that SNAP is the problem?
You have enough money for a ballroom. You have enough money to give Donald Trump $230 million from the DOJ because he got investigated. Somehow or another, that math doesn't add.
Nope. It's just, I mean, again, we tell ourselves and we accept this bullshit, this playing in our faces that this regime, but that these systems have been doing. Because let me just be clear that when Democrats had control and power, they did the bare fucking minimum, right? They did the bare minimum. And then tell us, like, look, but you have a rainbow flag and look, But we're in kente cloth and we're kneeling. Look, we're not as bad as the other guy, but y'all take money from the same fucking oligarchs.
Danielle, I'm just going to throw this out there just to start a conversation. Have you ever noticed that the Republican Party comes in and bankrupts the government, and then the Democratic Party, the only thing that they can get done is to bail out everything that the Republicans caused, and then the cycle continues on and on?
Yeah, as if like
Weird,
no one catches on to the fact that like
weird.
Democrats allow it to happen, Republicans that come in as the, come in, they destroy everything.
Yep.
Democrats come in as the janitor, and then we're the ones that are living in the wrecked house.
And isn't it weird that now that we're entering into a period of increased fascism, it's almost like the Republicans aren't even hiding anymore that they're wrecking the government and looting the treasury, and that they don't even need the Democrats to come in after them in order to fix it. Why? Because the police state and surveillance state and
We'll
military
fix it for them.
they've created together that's the only thing they can agree on, right? Is to go ahead and create this thing. Now all of a sudden we've reached a point where they don't even need the Democrats to come in as custodians anymore. It's almost like there was a rope-a-dope for decades that
Yeah.
went on and on and on again. And it's so incredible because it's like, oh, why didn't Joe Manchin vote for this? Why didn't Kirsten Sinema vote for it? What did they vote for, Danielle? The one or two bills that was going to ensure that capitalism could survive COVID. That's it.
Damn.
Everything else is completely off limits. Isn't it weird that the only time that a bill can get passed by the Democratic Party is to make sure that capitalism continues as the wealthy continue hoarding their resources? It's almost like we have dealt with two flavors and two varieties of the exact fucking thing.
Yep.
It, and by the way, it's almost like good cop, bad cop. It's almost like a boss who will come in and be like, oh, that other boss really sucks. I promise I'm trying to take care of this. Meanwhile, the other boss is angry and abusive and says the hard things and the angry things. We deserve better than that.
Yep. We
We all,
deserve better than the pendulum, right? Because what you just described is the pendulum that goes back and forth. And we tell us that, oh, this two-party system, like, this is what we got. It's the best that it can be. And I'm just like, no, it's two sides of the same coin. They're both riding the pendulum, right?
yep,
And we're the ones that are getting cut up below.
yep.
And I'm just like, and so until you realize that the fucking game is rigged and has been rigged since the beginning, and now it's not just rigged against the black people and it's not just rigged against the brown people, it's rigged against everybody, then you can stop looking and pointing fingers and saying that this person is to blame and that group is to blame. And though the trans athlete, well, that's really the problem that we got to face and fucking deal with, right? Not the people that are in your face robbing you fucking blind.
Did you see? I don't know if you saw it because I am a particular brand of political sicko. Did you see that report that was released, the Deciding to Win strategy report?
No.
David Plouffe, David Axelrod,
Oh,
James
uh-huh.
Carville. Oh, they got Nate Silver on that shit too, because of course they did. I read that. And Danielle, okay, does the Democratic Party think that Donald Trump is a fascistic threat? Well, they tell us they do, right? Meanwhile, what are they arguing? They're like, "Oh, it's not that we don't want trans people to be safe. It's just not popular to support them." And by the way, what is the major issue? It's trans people in sports. Are you fucking for real? Because you're giving the game away. You are there to negotiate the ransoming of people. You are
Mm,
there to say, like, you've got one person who has a gun that's holding everybody ransom, and everyone's like, well, we can just give this away. We can just give this away. There's nothing there that changes any paradigm. Nothing that they say there are no policy initiatives. There's
mm-mm.
nothing actually put forth to change anything.
Nope.
It's simply navigating this back and forth and continually ransoming people off.
Yep.
It's a fucking game, and we're not being represented in it. Period.
No. And it's always like deciding who is going to be on the bottom this time,
Yes.
right? Who is going to be on the bottom this time? Who are we going to throw under the bus? and say that the reason why we can't really have progress is because, it's just too complex of an issue. They're just too hard to understand,
Yep.
right? Like, it's just too much. And I'm just, I'm sick of the shit. And I think that a lot of Americans, not most, but a lot, are becoming sick of the shit too.
Yep.
Because you're looking around and you're saying to yourself, like, it isn't about nostalgia for the good old days. It's about realizing the bargains that we have been making
Yep.
all along, right? Bargains that we've been making for decades on decades on decades that have led us to this place. Like, this is what people have to understand. It didn't come out of nowhere. It didn't come out of nowhere. You've been bargaining on the backs of those that you have deemed to be less than forever. And now the chickens have come home to roost.
And by the way, Danielle, just to punctuate the point you just made, I know everyone's like, oh my God, 42 million people are on assistance. How, like, what are we going to do for them? That is the correct answer. How do we take care of those people? There's a second question that's not being asked. Why aren't more people on assistance? And here's the reason why. 1990s, the Democrats, the same group of fucking ghouls. Bill Clinton's administration was like, we need to reform welfare. We need to go in and make sure that people aren't cheating the system.
Yep.
And what happened? They keep
Welfare to work.
people from the rolls.
Yep.
It's actually manufactured that we don't have more people on assistance. That's the actual embarrassment of this thing, is that if this country was actually taking care of the people who are falling behind, it wouldn't be 12% of the country at this point. It would be closer to 50% of the country.
Mm-hmm.
It's a game that has been continually played. And I just ask people to look at one thing. The Democratic leaders, who, by the way, don't say anything, they are just completely feckless and impotent and embarrassing. How many of them are you hearing talk about how to protect people on Snap?
Mm.
You know why they don't? Because they don't want to associate themselves with assistance.
Yep.
They think it's a political loser. So they're not even using their political power and influence and communication platform to help the people that they're failing.
Yep.
They don't have the courage to do that. Why? Because they're fucking cowards. And because they don't care what happens to those people. It is a game, and the people on the outside of it who are hurting, they are the collateral damage of the game that these people are playing.
And the other reason why they don't touch it, Jared, is because they have allowed the Republican Party to create the narrative that
Yep.
the most people that receive SNAP benefits are what? Black people. And those people we know are so wildly undeserving. When the reality is that 35+% of SNAP people, right, are white people, right? That 1 in 5 kids, I think I saw posted by No Hungry, 1 in 5 kids in this country receive SNAP. 1 in 5. That means that when you have a classroom, right, of 25, 30 kids, like, this is what we've done. And so, again, because we have ignored race, because we chose to ignore racism, but yet we've built policies around that racism, right? Then when it comes to looking at those policies dead in the face, what do Democrats do? They shut their fucking eyes.
And I want to say something on that, Danielle, because I would be remiss if I didn't. Who does white supremacy and racism hurt? It hurts people of color. And who else does it hurt?
White people.
White people. And it always has. It is the greatest fairy tale bullshit manipulation tactic imaginable. And it's worked. It's worked since the creation of whiteness. And what does it do? It hurts literally everybody. That's the thing here. And the only way to get past this is to start recognize the prism of all these things, whether it's patriarchy, whether it's white supremacy, American exceptionalism, whatever it is, that literally hurts the people that it makes feel better as it's hurting them. That's it. It's delusion and it's magical thinking.
And I'll say this too, because a couple of people have said it in the chat. What happens when you have these mass layoffs coupled with inflation, coupled with, climate disaster, coupled with, secret police? is recognizing that the prisons that are being built
Mm.
ain't for the quote unquote illegal anything. It's not. The prisons that are being built are what people in the chat referred to as debt prisons, because eventually you're going to be forced to make decisions that go against the law, right? When the law has failed you, and
Yep.
then you will become part of the slave labor force that they are actually working to build, so that they don't need you as a worker that they have to pay with benefits and health care and all of these things. No, but they'll squeeze work out of you one way or another, and that will be the new slave labor force.
100%. And everything that they're trying out on them, it gets lost on everybody. What happens in fascistic countries? They start with a vulnerable group and they test things out. And if people get made uncomfortable when you talk about what's going on in Gaza, people need to understand that what's happening in Gaza is a testing out of what they're going to do to everybody.
Yep.
Period. They do it to the group that is most vulnerable, and then it ends up coming along. You should care about the most vulnerable, but if you can't get there with basic human empathy, you have to understand that's coming for you. Period. So we either make our stand now or we deal with this. That's it. Like that's the long and the short of it. And each one of these moments is another moment to make a stand, and this is a big one. This is a really, really big one. Period.
Yeah. I mean, people like to pretend that they don't have choices. We have a lot of choices in this moment. They are difficult choices, right? It's not the choice between Disneyland and Epcot. It's the choice, right, between like, who do we want to be and how do we want to move through this moment? How do we want to survive? How do we want to channel that into thriving? Those are the choices that we are being given. And it's one we need to take seriously before those decisions are made for us instead of by us.
100%. Danielle, my absolute pleasure as always. I'm so glad we do this.
I am so glad that we do this. I'm so glad that we've chosen to have these types of expansive conversations rather than just chasing headlines. Because I think that when we say to people in this moment that what you need to do is unlearn, what you need to do is unpack, what you need to do is relearn and recognize your responsibility, this is how we teach, this is how we lift, and this is how we shift.
I'm so relieved that we're not doing headlines. My God. All right. Best to your family. I hope they make it out the other side, and I'll be thinking.
Thank you.
All right. Everybody, take care.
Be well.